What's up? So, today we are going to try to do something a little bit different, which is basically showing you how do we usually use DMD2. So, you are going to see from the perspective of the developer how do I usually use this app when I'm riding. So, let's start by starting DMD2. And usually on a new install like this one, the first thing that you need to do is provide DMD2 with a required permissions. Let me just put this in full screen. Okay, you can actually see on the left panel, you can see that my location is moving. That's just because I'm actually simulating a route on the background so that we have some movement so we can check some stuff up. So the first thing that I do usually is download a map source. I'm going to download Portugal, which is where I am. Here we go. When we download the map, you can see that we are actually downloading a map file. Then there's a database file for points of interest, and then some required files that we use for routing. And the download is complete. So now you can see we have a map here. For my personal use, I basically only do off-road. So the first thing that I do is change the map type to off-road. So for that, you click on the map layers and then you go to map type and style, and I usually use this one, which has altitude lines. It has everything that's off-road. It's usually striped, like this green one, the yellow one, this brown one, and there's actually a map legend on drivemodedashboard.com website. You can check what each color means. Then the second thing that I usually do is actually do some adjustments for my device. Usually I scale all the text in the map. On this particular device, I'm actually going to reduce that to the minimum. Then you have the symbol scaling, which are for these types of icons, these points of interest. So let me scale that one. I like that a little bit bigger. And you will notice that if you keep your finger over this slider, you can actually see it increasing and decreasing in almost real time. Okay, then 3D buildings. I don't care. I don't usually ride where there's buildings. Hill shading is an online layer like this. It will cast hill shading. I don't usually use this, but I do use this option a lot. And for what we've seen on our Facebook group and on our forum, there seems to be some misunderstanding about what this does, because some users think that by enabling these points of interest, they will show on the map, but that's not the purpose of this. The actual purpose of this, it's because by default, let's get to a city where we have more. Okay, so let's go to a big city. So you will notice that on this zoom level around 500 meters, you are only seeing hospitals and full stations. But obviously if you scroll, if you zoom in, all the other points of interest will start popping up. Like here you have an hotel and you have a cafe. And if you start zooming out, you will see that they are only visible below 50 meter zoom. You can see the ruler on the corner, on the left bottom corner, and they go away if you start zooming out. You see this? So basically this option is for you to select points of interest where you want them to be visible at higher zoom levels. So usually when I do rides, either single day or multi-day, there are a couple of points of interest that I like to see on higher zoom levels. Usually restaurants, cafe, hotel, gas station and hospitals are on by default. So I'll add attractions and monuments and viewpoints. So now, since I enabled both hotels and cafes, these two should be visible on higher zooms. Now, usually when I'm riding, my regular zoom level is around 100 meters, between 100 and 200 meters. So now, because I enabled both these points of interest as highlights, even if I zoom out to 100 meters, they are all still visible. If I keep zooming out, you will see it. If you are on big cities, this will start to get really messy, as you can see here. But on off-road tracks where you are usually away from cities, that's not an issue, and you just want them on the map. So now I'm at 200 meters and they are all still visible, right? So let's load the GPX file. I'm loading the same one that I'm simulating on the background. So if I start following it, you will see that my location is moving. And now on these types of tracks, you can even see that there are not much points of interest, because this one is on remote areas. But here, for example, you can see that restaurants, monuments, and gas station and restaurants, they show up even on 200 and 500 meter zoom level, which is exactly what I want. Because since I ride mostly like this on this zoom level, I know that in this zoom level, those types of points of interest, the ones that we've selected here, will be visible on my zoom level. Yeah, there's not much I change here. Usually on the map view, I usually add my speed on this widget. I also like to add my trip distance And then on the other two, because I'm using the OBD2 connection, I usually like to monitor the coolant temperature and voltage. Another great thing that I really enjoy, and for GPX files, it's a feature that we have that whenever you load a GPX file, you can tell DMD2 to search along the track for certain types of points of interest, and then it will lay them on the map. It will show the icon on the map, and also on this box that you have on the left that shows you the progress. It can show you up to 3 different points of interest. At the moment we only have gas station, but for example, if I'm doing a multiple day ride, I usually like to know the distance to not only gas station, but usually restaurants and accommodation or whatever it is. So now it's reloading the GPX file, and you will see, yeah, now on the left box you have gas station, restaurant, and places to sleep, where you can see the distance for the next 2 of them, and those distances are always along the track and always ahead of you. So the idea behind this is that I can now make decisions while I'm riding. So usually some of the stuff that comes up when you are riding is obviously where is the next gas station, and when you find one gas station, sometimes you still have gas for a little bit more of riding, and you end up having to stop and trying to decide if you should go to that gas station or the next one. And now you don't need to stop. You look at the gas station, you know you have one in 29.8 kilometers, and then you have another one in 32 kilometers. So if you have enough gas for the one at 32 kilometers, you don't need to stop on the next one. And then it's the same logic for restaurants and places to sleep. Usually you have to make these types of decisions. For example, if it's a restaurant, and depending on the hours, if it's around the hour where you usually would lunch, for example, and if you have a restaurant in 28.7 kilometers and the next one is, for example, in 60 kilometers, then you can make a choice if you want to have lunch on the next one, or if you are good to go to reach to the next one. So same for places to sleep. And then on the bottom, the one that you see, that gas station, that's not a point of interest, that's actually a waypoint which is on the GPX file. Another thing that I usually do is I like to zoom to my typical riding zoom and adjust for my device the track thickness and those green arrows that shows you the track direction. I also like to do some adjustments to that, and that's also in settings, and then sizes and transparency. Now if you, it's the same logic as before. If you keep your finger over the slider, it gets transparent, and now you can slowly adjust and see how it's going to look. So I'm going to make this more thick. I don't use transparency. Then I'm going to increase the arrow size also, something like this. And then for waypoint pin size, So let's go to a spot where we have a waypoint. So yeah, we have one here. Yeah, the size is fine. So that's one of the things that I usually adjust. So for map settings, this is what I usually change, and I'm going to cover settings first and then show you how some stuff works. So usually if I'm setting up, I would do this changes on the map. On the global settings, I would usually lock screen orientation so that the device won't rotate. I use 20-hour format. Let's check. Okay, this one, I also always change this one, the automatic trip reset. Basically, what this does is you can set up a time interval. For example, I usually use 2 days. So this means if I'm 2 days if I go 2 days without starting DMD2 on this device, the next time I start it, it will automatically reset my trip values. And the way that the reason why I added this option is because most of the times I go for a ride, and the next ride that I do, I should do a trip reset first, but I always forget. So this way I don't need to remember to do the reset. For global settings, that's it. That's what I usually change. For the home screen, the whole purpose of the home screen, at least for me when I did this, was to make it a place where I could concentrate all types of information that is useful to me. And there was actually a lot of users who asked for the small map on the left. This is something I would never use myself, because when I switch from the map to the home screen, what I want to see is information that is usually not available when I'm in the map view. So I would reserve the home screen for other stuff. By default, you can see you have a left panel and a right panel. Obviously, on the right panel, I can have some app shortcuts that I use a lot. For example, Google Drive, which is where I usually go to get my GPX files. Google Maps for street navigation. What else do I usually use? Let me check. My last trip was the TT, so if I'm to resume the TT because I didn't finish, obviously the TT app would be useful. Maybe depending on your device, you might want to have the camera here if you're going to use the device to take some pictures along the way. I would probably add settings for Android settings. Some settings, sometimes I want to change them. And yeah, that's it. There are some missing apps that I usually use. I haven't installed them yet, so but you get the picture. Then on the center bottom, I usually use this for same to OBD sensors, because I don't actually have anything important that I want to monitor. Although this is the same data that I have here on the map. So maybe here you can use this for some other sensors, or maybe for some trip values. I don't know, it's your choice. On the bottom, yeah, I usually use the RPM, which is the one already there. And for the left panel, I would probably use trip information. By the way, to change what widgets you want to see here, you click this cogwheel, the settings, and then you have the left panel, center top, center bottom, right panel, and bottom panel. So you can see that for each panel, the left and right, you have multiple widgets inside. If you click on these arrows, you will see that it will change between 3 widgets. Same for the one on the right. So you have 3 + 3 widgets on the panels, which you can quickly change with the handlebar controller. So I would probably do something like trip information, trip statistics, which is my trip. On the position one, it was loading. For position 2, I would probably use a system widget, because there is actually a really cool system widget that I use a lot. It's called My Radar Summary, from an app called My Radar, and it shows weather information. So it's not installed at the moment, but that would probably be the one that I use. And actually at the moment, the only other widget that I would use, let's load it here, is my notification list. So I would probably ride most of the times like this, because the only useful information that might make me want to jump from the map to the home screen is the full trip data and then my notifications list. But for this notifications list, what I usually do on a trip is I filter out which apps I want to see notifications for. So, for example, if on your device you have a SIM card and you get calls, maybe you just want to get notifications for calls or SMS messages. If you use some kind of app to communicate between the members of your group, like we are actually using WhatsApp for that purpose. We create a group on WhatsApp, and then our riding group, we join all to the same group. And the way that I do it is that I disable all WhatsApp notifications and I just enable notifications for that group. And then in drive mode, I go to settings, then I go to notifications. Where is it? Here it is. And I disable the timeout usually. So this means that the only way for a notification pop-up to go away is if I pressed a controller button for it to go away. And then I filter out the apps for which I don't want to see notifications. So usually only enable it for messages, and actually I don't usually enable for messages. What I do, I don't have WhatsApp installed here, but I would enable WhatsApp so that I could get messages from that group. And then maybe I would enable it for the phone app, which is here. Okay. Then from this point on, I know that if I go to the home, I'm going to clear the notifications. If something shows here, it has to be from the phone or from WhatsApp. If I'm on the map and I get a notification, I also get a pop-up around in the left bottom corner telling me there's a notification. And then can go to the home screen and I will have a list. Even if I dismiss the notifications when I'm riding, I can always go back to the home and check better from who was the notification. The last thing I set up is probably the OBD connection, and for that I just go to the OBD screen, click on settings. I would select my OBD link bundle dongle, sorry, in this list, but it's not showing up because it's not currently paired. I usually enable this setting because on my motorcycle there's no voltage report from the ECU, but the OBD link can still get it using this option. And then I use the speed from the GPS. Yeah, you would probably want to set up the maximum RPM and where the red line starts to match your stock cluster. On some motorcycles, you might need to calibrate the throttle position so that the app can figure out what is the minimum and what is the max position. And to do that, you disable ear and then you click on calibrate throttle position, and this will start a guide, which I cannot start because I have no dongle connected at the moment. There's one last option that some users might want to use, which is the calculate fuel level. And if you use this, then you can, even if your ECU does not report fuel level, you can allow DMD2 to calculate based on your full tank. And now if you use a full sensor, for example, it is loaded on the top right position here. It's showing 299 kilometers, and you can, when you fill the tank, you can click here and reset the value like this. Okay, and you can use the full indication anywhere in the app. For example, I can add it here. Here it is. If you want to add it on the map, you can also add it here. And to reset, you go to the OBD, you click on the full, you tap on it, and now you can reset. I don't actually use this feature because I have the stock cluster on my motorcycle and it has a full indicator, so I don't have any particular need to use this calculated fuel level. So regarding setup, that's actually all the stuff that I usually do. Obviously, I would also pair my controller, which in this case it's already paired. And that's it regarding configuration.